Good morning, St. Francis. Good morning, people of God. It is Friday, the 22nd day of the month of August, 2025. It is Friday of the 20th week of the year. The 20th week in Ordinary Time is also because it is 1 week past the Solemnity of the Assumption last Friday. This Friday, we always celebrate now the crowning of Mary as the Queen of Heaven. Again, something that is not in Scripture, that comes down through tradition and through devotion and things like that to the Blessed Mother. And why not make her Queen of Heaven? Because somebody has to be, if God is King of Heaven and things like that. And so basically this devotion sort of begins. And having it take a week, I guess, for Mary to get acclimated to heaven before they decide to crown her Queen of Heaven is how this works. Again, and trying to find a rationality or reason behind it. It's kind of it's not very easy to do so. But we celebrate Mary's queenship today, and she is Queen of the Order of Friars Minor too. So it's a nice kind of thing to connect with this Queenship of Mary business. But just another view of the courtyard in its redesigned and renovated state. We just completed morning prayer once again here at the Franciscan School. As we move forward, we are still in the time of Judges, but now we move into the book of Ruth. Again, this interesting kind of book that is sort of an addition to the Hebrew Scriptures, and it's not necessarily. It's a kind of a book of wisdom. It's also a history. It's kind of all these things sort of wrapped up, together. But it's a very simple story about a woman named Ruth who marries into a Jewish family. And so right then and there, there's a very interesting kind of dynamic because prior to this time, again, Jews only marry Jews, and to keep the bloodline pure and things like that. But here, Naomi and then another woman, Orpha, who are both non-Jews, marry into this Jewish family of Naomi and her husband Elimelech. But everybody dies. All the men die, and so the question is now always what's to become of the daughters-in-law who are not necessarily Jews, because the men were the family was living outside of Jerusalem or outside of Bethlehem, someplace else, and that plane was very loud. And so now, because the husband has died and the sons have died, Naomi, the mother, needs to now move back to her own people in Bethlehem. And so Orpha has gone back to deal with her family, to be with her family again, which is sort of an interesting other kind of thing, because generally you didn't bring back the woman to the family that she came from after she got married, which is always the whole kind of thing of the problem of widows. Nobody would care for them because their families did not want them back, because it was always an extra mouth to feed, and marrying off a daughter was always a nice thing to do. Marrying off a woman, was always a nice thing to do. So, but somehow the people that both Orpha and Ruth come from receive back the women after the husband dies, and so she goes back. But Ruth does not want to go back because she has grown to love Naomi, and she basically stays with her and says that I will go where you go, I will stay where you stay, and your God will be my God. And that's a very interesting kind of dynamic, because within that is the sense of not only the pull of Judaism and the God that the Hebrews, have relationship with, but also the sense of love that can grow even between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. We've had Jesus basically going on and on about how his preaching is going to turn families against each other, and especially in-laws against in-laws. But here we have in Ruth this wonderful example of someone who recognizes love and who wants to remain with love and wants to help out of that love. And so she moves with Naomi back to Bethlehem. And we will see now what happens, because Ruth has chosen to do this wonderful, selfless, generous deed. In Matthew's Gospel today, again, the Sadducees have been silenced in their opposition to Jesus, and the Pharisees hear about this, and so they decide that they're going to try and trip Jesus up, and asking again, what commandment is the greatest? Because that can always get you into trouble, again, because there has to be one, they think, and the scribes and Pharisees and the Sadducees all had their favorites, and whatever it is. Jesus goes above and beyond, again, the 10 Commandments, and basically says, yes, it's about loving God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, whatever, but it's also loving your neighbor as yourself. Again, the extension of this. That's really not one of the commandments. It is to love God and to make sure you honor God. And then it's like, don't covet anything of your neighbors, and don't lie, don't steal, don't whatever it is. A bunch of don'ts. But the understanding of love, of each other, is something again that Jesus brings into the covenant, into the commandments, and the importance, of doing that and remembering that all the time. Again, without, love, we are nothing. Without love, things cease to exist. Without love, there is no hope. There is only despair. To remember love is what we are called to do as believers in this world. And because we remember it, we put it into actions, as Ruth does with Naomi. May that remembrance and remembering how powerful love can be in our lives allow us, to live lives that are fruitful, that are holy, that are filled with goodness and wonder and beauty. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.